Hello guys! If I had to choose the most important events of this week that help us defeat Russia, I would say 5 Russian helicopters collapsed, 2 aircraft and Ukrainian drones reaching far inside the Russian Riga to Murmansk region, their evil airbase Olenia, and destroying their strategic bomber Tu-22 that they used against Ukraine but won't be able to continue. There were other important political and diplomatic events like the visit of our Minister of Foreign Affairs to China, which I did not support that much, or for example the conversation between the head of the Pentagon, Austin, and the Russian Minister of Attack, Belousov. What were they talking about? But as I was collecting these important, serious facts of the week, I've read an update from Russia. Literally 2 people were targeted by a lightning when they were standing in front of the cathedral of the Russian armed forces. Can you imagine that? Russian armed forces have their central cathedral and a lightning hit on people standing near. Anyway, I feel like it's quite obvious whom we should support in this war, and that's of course the democratic, freedom-loving people of Ukraine and the world who stand with us together. So let me tell you more of the important events of this week from an ordinary Ukrainian perspective. My name is Anna, I'm from Ukraine, I'm in Ukraine, and I believe the world needs to know more about the important things happening right now in my country, as much of the global future depends on the defeat of authoritarian regimes. United we stand. Join the community of the channel if you're new, subscribe and demonstrate your solidarity. So let's start with the most beautiful and effective Ukrainian strategy, and that is the destruction of Russian oil refineries and depots. This strategy works really well in combination with sanctions, and Russia had to ban the export of oil products, which actually brought 1/3 of its budget. But we continue destroying more of oil refineries, and this week targeted one in Tuapse, which is on the shores of the Black Sea, and this one had a marine terminal used for export to China. China, stop helping Russia, or we will stop that by ourselves. Another oil refinery was targeted in Ryazan, and an oil depot with lots and lots of oil stored for the front lines in Kursk region. You know, Kursk is close to the front lines, and actually the majority of these bordering Ukraine-Russian regions have already been turned into a war zone. But don't blame Ukrainians, blame the invaders. Russians always have a choice. They can retreat back home and start fighting in Kremlin. That's exactly where their troubles are located. But unfortunately, not yet, not yet. Most importantly, Ukrainian drones performed some outstanding military operations inside Russia, and this week we have targeted numerous air bases in Angels, in Dyahilevo, but what is most interesting and perhaps my favorite hit was in Murmansk, airbase Olenia, an evil one, and we have a separate video on that describing successful Ukrainian operations and really dark days for the Russian aviation. So in Olenia, that is often used for Russian bombers that will later go to Ukraine, we neutralized a huge strategic bomber Tu-22, capable of carrying missiles to Ukraine, but not anymore. Su-34 collapsed in Russia while training, and as one of the friends and subscribers of the channel beautifully described, well, Russians are training how to collapse beautifully. That made me laugh, and I thought I will share that with you. I always read your comments, you inspire my videos, my thoughts, and believe me, you help me and many Ukrainians live. Same as the destruction of 3 more fighter helicopters in Russia this week, 2 in Moscow region, 1 in Samara, and 2 more collapsing. You see, with lightnings, with Russian aircraft and helicopters collapsing, we see that all the good things and God and angels and aliens, whatever you choose to believe in, fight together with us against this authoritarian Russian evil. But once again, we are doing our best because, believe me, every Ukrainian is super motivated. Please share my motivational videos because we need to remain strong and united. Because unfortunately, it's not just about territories, it's about the future of the world and the strengths of the democratic world, which authoritarian regimes want to shake. Russia pretends everything is fine with its economy when in reality it is definitely not. And finally, 8 ministers of finance of the EU countries decided to report that to reassure our allies that we have to continue sanctioning Russia and also try to prevent other southern countries from backing up Putin's regime. It is obvious that China now fights on the side of Russia. Of course, they are shrewd enough not to send weapons directly, but they provide Russia with all the necessary details to later assemble these weapons, and they definitely back up Russian economy by developing trade and other stuff with this country. That's why personally I believe that the visit of the Ukrainian Minister of Foreign Affairs is more symbolic to demonstrate that we're also looking for the ways to stop the war. But we do understand that as long as China helps Russia survive, helps Russian economy, they are not serious about stopping this war. Once again, China can do it really easily without any negotiations, simply by stopping support to Russia. Unfortunately, not yet, but I'm sure that with NATO leaders, with Blinken, for example, and other global leaders openly speaking about China's part in Russian war against Ukraine, may actually influence the opinion of the Chinese leaders, because they always choose trade before anything else, and economy goes first. But not just Russian economy is collapsing, they are dragging Chinese with them. So I pray that this day of Chinese awakening and end of their support to Russia comes soon. But once again, I do not believe that China can be a trustworthy partner for democratic countries with their attitudes to their internal affairs, how many actually various nationalities are now suppressed in China. It's a very complicated question, but definitely they see this world and its future differently than the majority of the democracy-loving people. But we all have to discuss, to cooperate, of course. It's only Russia and some other crazy regimes that attack militarily people who see the world a little bit different than they do. Another very interesting conversation that was held during this week was actually a telephone call between Austin, who is the head of Pentagon and the US Defense, and the Russian Minister of Attack, Belousov. Belousov is quite new. He substituted Shoigu. He is very like all-time friend of Putin, and perhaps the main reason why he became the Minister of Defense with his totally economic, even Soviet economic background, is the reason that he is super supportive of everything that Putin does. So Belousov initiated this conversation with Austin, saying that they know about one secret plan of the Ukrainian armed forces, and he was trying to find out whether Austin knows about that. You know, here inside Ukraine, we have multiple versions about the reason of this conversation and whether there is a secret operation by the Ukrainian armed forces. I'd love to believe there is one, but we cannot know. Like, is there such an operation? Did Austin know about it? Maybe it's something invented by Belousov to make it appear like Ukraine is secretly developing something. Or maybe Austin knows everything but didn't tell it to Belousov. We will never know. At first I was a bit worried why Russia and the United States have this conversation, but once again, having watched lots of YouTubers and experts talking about that, I realized these things happened even with Shoigu still being a minister, and it's kind of, well, to some extent normal between super strong nuclear countries that have to exchange some opinions, well, at least via telephone. So hopefully there is some super secret, super effective special military operation that Ukraine prepares and Austin backs up. We'll see in the days to come. And if you're new to the channel, subscribe and we will discuss that together. And we can also discuss the Pompeo's peace plan. Many of you left me positive comments below the videos. Honestly, the plan does not seem bad, but in all these super optimistic plans about the end of Russian war in Ukraine in a couple of hours, if not in a couple of days, they all lack one major detail. Who told you that Russia will accept this? Who told you that some economic problems or a possibility to sit at the table at G8 is a reason for Russia? They have been at that table, they were at that table previously, but they have chosen invasion, destruction, and more chaos. One of the major things that many democratic leaders do not understand about Russia, and especially about Putin, he needs this war partially to continue his rule and also to persuade people that all of the internal problems are actually caused by war, but not by his oligarchy and criminal regime and extreme poverty of this largest country in the world that actually definitely do not need any more territories. And they continue provoking, they continue threatening NATO, European countries, and 3 drones actually traveled to Romania. During one of the heaviest attacks on Odessa region, they crossed the border of a NATO country. And I know many people provide me with good explanations why Romania did not shoot down the drones, but guys, drones are dangerous by themselves. You cannot observe them flying in your country. You have to stop them, you have to shoot them down, and this is totally legal. This is totally legal. This cannot be treated as an attack on Russia under any condition. So hopefully, if Russia continues provoking NATO countries, we will see their response. And so far, the response is the support of Ukraine, for which we are very grateful. And once again, please understand, this is not just about the protection of Ukrainian people and Ukrainian territories. This is also about the defeat of Russia and its desire to destroy more of Europe, to destroy more of world order, and to cause more chaos far away, even beyond the ocean. And some unexpectedly good news, perhaps, from Mali. I hope I pronounced correctly the name of this African country with the capital in Bamako. Actually, it's a very special country for me because my parents, they were doctors, dentists, and back in Soviet times, they spent 2 years before my birth in Mali, working as doctors in the children's hospital. So at home, I've heard lots of stories about this country. I know lots of names and people from Bamako and beautiful photos, traditions, and some souvenirs. So for me, it's a beautiful country that I would love to visit one day. But I do understand it has very difficult present at the moment with lots of military fights, and in total, this country also suffers from the influence of Russia. Unfortunately, many countries see Russia as the guard of security in the region when it is just the country, and they send lots of their private armies to actually loot this land, steal their resources and pretend that they are protecting something. So lots of Wagner soldiers who are now I cannot say serving in Mali, because actually they are stealing, they are controlling, they are changing the zones of influence. So many of Wagner soldiers were neutralized by the African Tuareg fighters, and very likely a huge Russian propagandist who traveled together with Wagner group and who is the author of the channel Gray Zone, and who actually cheered for such private armies and their actions around the world, was also neutralized together with them. What is also interesting here inside Ukraine, I've read a number of opinions that this may even be the Minister of Defense of Russia that provided some secret information about the location of Wagner group, because we see this competition continues, and even after the assassination of Prigozhin, Putin sees them as a threat. Once again, many things may happen during the next months and years in Russia, but as a Ukrainian, I do not see any real good oppositioners. So even those who will be fighting for power, even those who will try to replace or substitute Putin, may be the same bad as he is. Unfortunately, many of the Russian people, these are dozens, if not hundreds of millions, are infected with the virus of imperialism. And they dream about the reconstruction of the Soviet Union, which for many countries like Ukraine, like the Baltic countries, was the prison. And we will do everything to prevent the expansion of the Russian Empire and to defeat them once and forever. Actually, many of Ukrainian people say our fight with the Russian Empire continues for 300 years and we have to end it and not to pass it to the next generations of Ukrainians. Please share the videos, that's important, taking into account that global media pays more attention to other things and sometimes tries to help spread more Russian narratives. That was why we have to be aware, and I'm very grateful for the opportunities that YouTube gives. So share these videos on the platforms that you follow, you like. Please join me on Instagram, Threads, X, and Discord. Check lots of beautiful items in our merch shop that work well as reminders and conversation starters about Ukraine, and all the links that you need are in the description of this video. Thank you for buying me coffees, becoming my patrons and sponsors of the channel, and helping me film and write more. And now I'm in this lifestyle part of my book where I'm surprised at how many things are different now in our life, and I'm trying to explain more of what is it to live almost a normal life, because I'm in a semi-safe zone, but still very abnormal life in times of war. Always give me your ideas in comments. I read them attentively and know I love you, and I'm very grateful as millions of Ukrainians for your support. Slava Ukraini!